Welcome back, children, and thank you for joining me again here on the Broken Peepers Art Show, where sometimes I show you how to make art and other times you watch me make art while I talk about something else. Today I'm going to talk about something else. So I really like books, and I'm in the best book club in the world, and I happen to have read a couple times, listened to actually. I really like audiobooks because I like audiobooks because they allow me to read a couple books at the same time. Like there are times of the day where I can read a regular book with words and pages, but then there's other times when I could pay attention to a book, but I can't physically read it. Like when I'm doing the dishes or data entry at work or even sometimes painting. I can't listen to a book when I do mentally intensive things like graphic design or laying out a storyboard or something like that. But there's plenty of times when I can listen to a book while I'm doing other dull activities. And so I've listened to this book a couple of times called Stardust by Neil Gaiman. And you might be familiar with Neil Gaiman through a couple different routes. Maybe if you're familiar with comic books, you might know that he wrote Sandman. If you're familiar with TV, he wrote a book called Good Omens that he collaborated on with Terry Pratchett that they made into a really good TV show. And he wrote American Gods, which is an amazing full cast audiobook that I cannot recommend highly enough, that they made into a pretty good TV show. I was pretty satisfied with that interpretation of the book to the TV show. Only slightly disappointed in some elements, but overall it's a good show. So anyways, this other book that he wrote, I think a long time ago, I think it was written in late 80s. I think there are a couple different iterations of it, there's a movie, I don't know what else. I was only aware of the movie recently, long after I read the book, listened to the book. I haven't seen it, but the book is pretty good. So let's get into it. Stardust. We open up on a city called Wall, more of a town. It's a town called Wall, and it's called Wall because it's on the borderland between Fairy and the real world, and there is a wall that they keep guards at to keep people from going into Fairy. I guess they don't need to keep people from coming out of Fairy and into the real world. I mean, who would want to? I can relate to that sentiment. So, in this town, on the border, Fairy, every 9 years they have a fair just across the wall where fairy folk come and sell their stuff to regular world people. And during one of these fairs, a boy from Wall, not really a boy, a young man, meets a girl who is a slave girl to a witch. And she is going to be a slave until really weird conditions are met. What is it? She can be free if the moon loses her daughter on a week where 2 Mondays come together. So, something bizarre like that where it can't happen. So, he meets her. He goes back that night and they sleep together. They do the little hanky-panky, and they don't call it the hanky-pank. I don't think anybody calls it hanky-panky anymore. Anyways, I'm a 90-year-old woman, I guess. So they have their one fun night together, and then they never see each other again. He marries a girl shortly thereafter, and then a few months pass, and a baby is left at the wall that is his son, named Tristan Thorn. So we've got a kid that's half fairy, half human. And years go by. Tristan is 18. There's a girl that he really likes, and he's trying to get anything from her. He's begging her to hold my hand, or give me a kiss, or marry me. He's like running through the gamut of possible things that she might do for him. And she says, okay, Tristan Thorn. Her name's Victoria Forrester. Okay, Tristan Thorn. If you can bring me that star that we just saw fall, I will give you anything you want. Oh, anything you want. So he's like, okay, deal, chick. He goes home and he packs a lunch and he takes off. He saw it fall into Fairy, and he goes into Fairy. They let him by because they know he's half fairy, half human. He didn't, but they let him in. So off he goes on his little adventure. Meanwhile, because this is a Neil Gaiman story, there's always a meanwhile story happening. We have a king who's dying in his bedchamber, and he's surrounded by his 7 sons, 4 of whom are dead and 3 of whom are alive. The alive ones are not aware of the dead ones being there. And he's telling them how disappointed he is in them because there should only be one of them left so that that one can take over the kingdom. This is in Fairy. Did I mention this is in Fairy? Because obviously it is. And the idea is that they should have killed each other off by now so that only one is left and he becomes king. And they have failed to do that. So he decides instead, I will throw this stone up into the sky, and whoever finds it is the king of Stormhold. And he throws it, it goes way up into the sky, and then falls down. And you think, oh, that's probably the star that we saw fall. So what's gonna happen now? So anyways, he throws the star. He doesn't throw the star. He throws the stone and says, whoever gets it is the king. Okay, bye. And then he dies. Another meanwhile is witches, because of course there are witches. They know the star is out there. They want it so that they can stay young. So one of them, they're all super old. One of them takes the last of the star that they had from before and gets young and goes after the new star. Oh my goodness. This is... Okay, I gotta stop the story for just a second because... So we have birds. We have a lot of birds that live around our place. In particular, a little blackbird family. And the other day, a little baby blackbird that was learning how to fly, flew up to my window here and clung onto the screen and just hung there for a few seconds, confused about what to do now. And then flopped down onto the deck and, was learning to fly. It was really sweet and wonderful. And we've been watching him grow up the past, week or two. And then we saw a little baby bird squished in the street, just in our street, one house down. So we were sad. But it's good news for our little blackbird. He's still alive. Because I just watched him sitting in our driveway here with his parents. And they're handing back and forth, food or sticks or something. But he's alive! So that's nice. Yay! Okay, well that's good. Anyways, moving on. Where was I? Witches. So the witches are after the star. So we have 3 brothers of princes, I guess, who are after the stone, a witch who's after the star, and Tristan who's after the star. Okay. Tristan meets an old hairy guy, a little hairy guy, and gets his help to get to the star by holding he gives him a candle. It's almost burned out, but he gives him a candle where when you light it and you walk toward your destination, it jump, hop, skips you there. So he takes it, lights it, and starts walking, and with his first step, he's in a swamp, and then with the next step, he's on the side of a mountain, that kind of thing, And that's another great thing about a Neil Gaiman book, is everything just kind of tumbles along, like it's natural. Of course he's got a candle that helps him skip like miles ahead at a time. And it's it just rambles along. It's such a fun little way of telling a story and doesn't linger too long on any one detail. If you like a slow-paced book, this is not for you. I do like a slow-paced book too, though. But anyways, so he has this candle, and it helps him. He walks towards the star destination because he knows where everything is in fairy. It's like a natural ability that he's discovered that he has. If you ask him where is whatever city or whatever landmark in fairy, even though he'd never heard of it before, he can point to it. So he knows where the star is. He walks with his candle towards the star. The candle burns out after he gets there, so he'll have to find his way back. And he should. The little hairy man told him, "You're not going to be the only one after this star, so you should need to be careful and hurry up." He gets to this clearing, and he's looking around for a star, and he hears crying, and he sees a girl crying, and he's like, "Okay, hey girl, why are you crying?" And she says, "I broke my leg." And he says, "Oh, have you seen a star around here?" He doesn't even care that she's broken her leg and she's crying. But anyways, "Have you seen a star around here?" And she says, "I broke my leg." And here's another nice thing about a Neil Gaiman story is he doesn't treat you like you're an idiot. I can imagine some other authors using the same story, and they pretend that we're dumb enough that we don't know that the girl is the star. For many chapters this would go on, and they would say the guy, Tristan, would be an idiot too, and he wouldn't know it until later when it's spelled out for him. Gaiman doesn't do that, in this story at least. Usually he doesn't do that at all. Anyways, in this story, Tristan says, "Oh, you're the star. Okay, well, you're coming with me." And he puts a chain around her wrist. The little hairy man gave him, so it's a magical chain. So he's like, found a girl with a broken leg, chained her up. Okay. And so they're off, slowly because she has a broken leg. At some point, they run across a lion fighting a unicorn. I think it's a lion. It's an old story, Lion and the Unicorn. Unicorn and the Tiger? Lion? Whatever it is. I don't know it. It's referenced in this. He says there's an old story, and Tristan is aware of it. That's how he can stop the fight. They befriend the unicorn quite easily because the unicorn is the creature of the moon, and the moon is the mother to all stars. So obviously this unicorn loves the star. And they hop on the unicorn and start riding hopefully towards home, towards Wall. And at some point they get separated because Tristan trusts her too much and unchains himself to go get firewood or something like that. So she takes off on the unicorn. She runs across an inn out in the woods that is owned by this sweet old woman who's taking care of her and giving her a bath and making her feel nice and warm and cozy. And she's not a nice old woman, she's the witch, trying to make the star as comfortable as possible, because when the star's heart is happy, its heart is therefore more potent, more valuable, whatever. She wants to eat her heart. She wants to take the heart back home to her sisters, and that's how they'll be young, is by eating her heart. So she's trying to make her happy so that her heart is as good as possible before she cuts it out of her. And while she's doing that, Tristan runs across the eldest brother of the three that are coming for the stone. And he's using runes, like Nordic runes, to find the stone, which the star has. So the star is not the stone, they're not the same thing, and he never explains this outright, but obviously what happened is the king threw the stone up into the sky and it knocked a star out of the sky, and she still has it. She has to hang on to it until the right person asks her for it. Okay? So Tristan runs across the eldest brother, there are still 2 brothers left at this point. We kind of I skipped over the part where one of the brothers is incapacitated. And he and the older brother team up and get to the inn as well. And they don't realize that the girl is there or anything. They just find a spot to stop in a storm. And once everything comes out, Tristan realizes that the star is there. The brother realizes that the stone is there, and there's the witch trying to get in the middle of things. It's a hullabaloo, to say the least. And Tristan comes up with this crazy plan. He takes the leftover candle wax from that crazy candle. Since there's no wick, he can't burn it. But his plan is to stuff his hand into the burning fire in the fireplace and then start walking. And it works. He shoves his hand into the fire, and him and the star start walking, and they get away. Burns the heck out of his hand, but they get away. And they end up on like a cloud. So see, the story just kind of rambles along. There's a little bit of adventure, and then there's more like rambling and like crazy stuff that you get to see. You're on a cloud, and there's a floating ship, and they pick you up, and you get to try their food, and they transport you to somewhere else, and it's just like, it just tumbles along, and I love it. So, the eldest brother is killed by the witch, which means the last brother that's left has to not only find the stone, which the star still has, but he needs to avenge his brother's death by killing the witch as well. So that adds a little bit of complication to his little story. And that's where those stories start to separate a little bit. And the brother is taken completely out of the story when he tries to avenge his brother's death by killing the witch, but she kills him instead. So that storyline is pretty much ended. And that's kind of a fun overlapping of stories. Like, we were introduced to that king and his son's story in the middle of their story, and then their story ended in the middle of the main story. It's a really fun overlapping of storylines. And there's also like other miniature stories that have nothing to do with the main story at all. They just add detail to the world. Like, there's a squirrel that an owl tries to eat and it misses. And the owl is actually, you learn, like he just tells you, the owl is actually a person turned into an owl. And the only way to be turned back into a human is by eating the squirrel that ate the nut from the tree of Dragadoo or something. And then the squirrel is actually a person turned into a squirrel that can only turn back into a human if they eat the nut off the tree of. So it's a fun little world building kind of element that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the story. Like, that literally had nothing to do with the main storyline. It just is an element in the world that builds it. And it doesn't linger on it too long, so you don't get annoyed that he's throwing in things that don't have anything to do with the story. It just builds on it, and like, it's very whimsical. If you're looking for whimsy, it is chock full of whimsy here. So anyways, the witch decides that she's going to wait at a spot where everybody has to pass through to get to the town of Wall, so she can't miss them. They're going to come through there. Cool. She had already run across a fellow witch of hers who happened to be the witch who owned the slave girl at the beginning, Tristan's mom. So they met on the road, and they had a little argument, and this main witch is very powerful, and she cast a spell on the other witch, the one who owns Tristan's mom, and so that she can't ever see the star. She can't know about the star. She can't hear anything about the star. She cannot be aware of the star in any way, shape, or form. So that's an interesting thought. And now Tristan and the star have gotten back on track. They're headed towards Wall, and they run across this other witch who owns Tristan's mom, who Tristan doesn't know is his mom. And actually, they don't meet her as a person until much later, because most of the time she's kept in the form of a bird. The witch keeps her in the form of a bird, probably because she's easier to deal with that way and eats less. And because she's got this spell, the witch has this spell cast on her by the other witch, that she can't ever know anything about this star. All she sees is Tristan. And they struck a deal so that they can get transportation to Wall. It's a whole fun little encounter with magic and whatnot, and you'll enjoy that. It's fun. And so anyways, they get to the spot where the other witch is waiting, and because the star is riding in this other witch's, her name is Ditchwater Sal. I should have mentioned that so we could just keep track of them a little easier. Her name is Ditchwater Sal. She's hanging out in her caravan, even though Ditchwater Sal cannot see her, hear her, know anything about her, because they struck a deal that Tristan could get to Wall safely with her, with Ditchwater Sal. This is getting a little confusing, I'm sorry. So Tristan is on the caravan with the star, and they go through the area where the other witch is waiting for the star, and because Ditchwater Sal doesn't know who that is, when the other witch asks her who's traveling with you and compels her to tell the truth, she tells her, just meet my bird servant girl and this kid, Tristan. That's it. Because she cannot know. The other witch screwed herself out of a big deal, because Ditchwater Sal didn't know she was there and wasn't forced to tell her that she was there. So the star gets transported right past the dangerous witch without either of them ever knowing it, and makes it all the way to Wall. And it's, I don't want to tell you the whole rest, everything. I mean, I've already told you a lot of it, but they make it there. He decides not to marry Victoria Forrester because obviously he's in love with the star now, and it's a fun little story, very entertaining. It trucks right along. Like I said, it's a pretty quick moving story. I think the audiobook is like 6 hours, so it's not that long. I think it's 6 hours, and totally worth the listen. Probably worth the read too. I have not actually read the physical book. And let me see. Yeah, 6 hours. Almost exactly 6 hours. So, I would highly recommend it. It's a wonderful little story with lots of layers, a lot of interesting story elements. And since it's only 6 hours, it's totally worth the time. 5 out of 5 for sure for me. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed watching me paint. I hope you didn't mind me rambling on about a book that I like, because I think I will do more of these. So, alright guys, thanks for coming. Have a great day.